One winter's day the queen watched as the snowflakes fell as she sewed. He was so captivated that he misjudged and pricked himself on one finger, dropping 3 drops of the red blood on the snow. At that moment he thought, "How I wish I had such a daughter, white as snow, as rosy as blood, and with black hair like ebony." After a time her wish was fulfilled and gave birth to a beautiful girl, white as snow, pink as blood and hair as ebony. His name was Snow White, although his birth was the death of his mother. Over the years the widowed king decided to marry another woman. A woman as beautiful as envious and proud. He had this magic mirror to which every day asked, "Mirror, mirror, answer me one thing, am I not the most beautiful?" And the mirror always answered, "Yes, my queen. You are the most beautiful." But the day that Snow White turned 7 the mirror changed her response. "No, my queen. The most beautiful is now Snow White." At this, the queen was angry. Envy was eating her from the inside, and such was the hatred she felt for her that she ordered a hunter to take her into the woods, kill her, and return with her heart to know that she had done her bidding. But once in the forest the hunter looked at the young, sweet Snow White and was not able to do so. Instead, he killed a small boar that passed by to give his heart to the queen. Snow White was then alone in the forest, scared and not knowing where to go. It began to run until night fell. Then he saw light in a little house and entered it. It was a private little house. Everything was very small there. On the table were placed 7 plates, 7 forks, 7 spoons, 7 knives and 7 cups. Snow White was so hungry that she tasted a bite of each dish and sat down as best she could on one of the little chairs. She was so exhausted that she felt sleepy, then found a room with 7 beds and snuggled into one of them. The dwarfs of the mine returned, well into the night, where they worked to dig precious stones. Upon arrival they quickly realized that someone had been there. "Someone has eaten my plate," said the first. "Someone's used my fork," said the second. "Someone has drunk from my glass," said the third. "Someone has cut with my knife," said the room. "Someone has cleaned up with my napkin," said the fifth. "Someone has eaten my bread," said the sixth. "Someone has sat in my chair," said the seventh. When they entered the room they revealed the mystery about what had happened, and they were left with the mouth open when seeing such a beautiful girl. They liked it so much that they decided to let it sleep. The next day Snow White told the dwarfs the story of how she had gotten there. The dwarfs felt very sorry for her and offered to stay at her house. But they warned him to be very careful and not open the door to anyone when they were not. The stepmother meanwhile, convinced that Snow White was dead, stood before her mirror and asked again, "Mirror, mirror, answer me one thing, am I not the most beautiful?" "My queen, you are a star, but I am sorry to tell you that Snow White is still the most beautiful." The queen became furious and used her powers to know where the girl was hiding. When he learned that he was in the house of the dwarfs, he prepared a poisoned apple, dressed as a peasant, and headed for the mountain. When he arrived, he knocked on the door. Snow White peeked out the window and said, "I cannot open anybody, the dwarfs have forbidden me." "Do not fear, my daughter, I only come to bring you apples. I have many and I do not know what to do with them. I'll leave you one here, in case you feel like it later." Snow White trusts her, bit the apple and fell to the ground suddenly. The wicked queen who saw her, left laughing at having gotten his way. She just wanted to reach the palace and ask her magic mirror who was the most beautiful now. Snow White. "Mirror, mirror, answer me one thing, am I not the most beautiful?" "Yes, my queen." again you are the most beautiful." When the dwarfs came home and found her dead on the floor, Snow White tried to see if they could still do anything, but all her efforts were in vain. Snow White was dead. So, since they could not do anything else, they had a glass box made, put it on it, and carried it to the top of the mountain where they had been veiling it for a long time. Many of the forest animals joined them, mourning the loss of the girl. But one day there appeared a prince who, when he saw her, immediately fell in love with her, and asked the dwarfs if he could take her with him. The dwarfs were not convinced by the idea, but the prince promised to take care of it and venerate it, so they agreed. When the prince's men carried Snow White, they stumbled over a stone, and from the blow, the bite of poisoned apple shot out of Snow White's throat. At that moment, Snow White opened her eyes again. "Where I am? What happened?" Snow White asked, disoriented. "Calm down, you are safe and sound at last, and you have made me the most fortunate man in the world." Snow White and the prince became husband and wife and lived happily in their castle.